Hey there, Groovesters, Groove Stars, Ridgely here. Super excited to have a gentleman on with me today that is very, very unique. An elite high performance voice and acting coach in Hollywood, having worked with people like Drew Barrymore. Yes, that would be the one of, Academy Award nomination person, and Lauren Bacall, and of course, our brother Adam Levine from Maroon 5. Sugar! What? Right? And I know recently with top 24 people on American Idol, working on series like Narcos Mexico, all the Alvin and the Chipmunk movies, our good friend Steven Memel. Now, Steven, how do you even get into those kind of things, man? I mean, that's just way too cool.
I don't know, and this is not name dropping. This is one of those moments when I really went, how did this happen? I used to go, I was used to be invited to some of Stevie Wonder's birthday parties, and my wife and I were driving out of the event, and we were going through the gate, and I just looked at her and I said, how did this happen? And it's really just a confluence of events and things that you never could orchestrate. And I have a friend who's a real expert in networking, and he says you can't make things happen, but you can put yourself in an environment where things can happen.
Yeah, exactly right. I think that's very true. And it also goes to the point of if you want to make things happen, you got to get out there. I mean,
You do.
you can't lock it. Oh, and I hope they discover me kind of feeling. That never works. My daughter, as you know, is now a soloist with Hollywood Ballet. So she's a ballerina.
Mm.
And everything that she's done is because she got out and found somebody and met somebody and then got an audition and then got a thing. And it just really works that way. Goes to the power of for online marketers. Hey man, you got to go to events, you got to mastermind, you got to get in peer-to-peer groups, you got to do all that stuff to make it really happen. But I'm particularly excited because you graciously agreed to share with us some of your signature work in the power of switching on. And that means in all areas, right? It's not just as a performer, it's
Correct.
something.
Correct. I developed it in the performing arts because there were consistent things I saw. And I happen to do a lot of different arts, dancing, singing, acting, piano. And what I noticed, it took me a while to get to it, but I noticed at 21, I said, there's one consistent thing through all this, me.
Mhm.
And so it came to the idea of there's really only one art, it's you. And everything after that is really deciding what avenue, what pathway you're going to put this more or less fully expressed version of yourself through, how that gets brought to the world. It's a guitar, a voice. For an accountant, it's a spreadsheet because a spreadsheet tells a story of a family and their values and so much. So it really is a universal set of principles that is applied to everything. And you'll see some examples of that as we go through today. You
And do you
know,
think, Stephen, that it is a little bit of like of how one gets into their what is known today, being bantered about a lot as the zone of genius? How do you find a
right.
way to get in your zone of genius?
Yes. And I have a model called the 5 stages of ultimate performance. And they're not stages like you go through this stage and this stage and this stage. They're literally like a platform upon which one becomes a master performer. And the stage of body, which is about your skills and even your environment. And there's the stage of mind. One of the primary questions there is, are the thoughts I'm thinking undermining me or supporting me? That's also where analysis comes in. There's the stage of emotion, which is connection, heart, and how we connect to other people. And the first place we got to connect is with ourselves, be congruent with ourselves, because if you're not achieving that, then everything else seems false after that. And then the fourth is the stage of energy, which people rarely understand how much control they have over that on a daily basis. There's a lot about unconscious patterns and getting through those in the science of switching on. because most people walk around with their energy at about an unconscious 3 to 6. They never go down to 1 because there's a fear of that delicateness, and they never go up to 11, right? Because of a very interesting aspect of risk psychology, which is that we will risk more to hold on to something that we already have than we will risk for something greater in the future, right? And there's one thing that begins with the letter D that none of us want to lose, our dignity. So I'll walk out of here with people not noticing me. I'll walk out of here not doing my absolute fullest expression, the best that I can do, but at least I'll walk out with my dignity intact.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting because I know you and I've had conversations that have been pretty deep in the past, and I don't know if I shared with you that the one thing that I consider to be the single most important thing I do every day is get up and do my meditation, in my case, chanting, for about 30 minutes to raise my life state so that from that point forward, everything that I see and everything that I touch is in that higher life condition, that higher vibration.
Absolutely.
And I honestly believe it's the most important thing I do every day.
Well, and that's your form of switching on. And that's why what I do is called the science of switching on. And quite frankly, there's one thing I left out, I can't believe, but I mentioned 4 stages. The fifth is something in which all the others sit. And after you've done the work in the others, you let go of it and you step into this state I call the quickening. And the quickening I describe as a state of being where you're completely fully conscious, yet completely unself-conscious. You're completely aware of everything that's happening, yet you have no self-consciousness. And the difference is self-consciousness has judgment in it. Awareness is noticing what the things are as they unfold organically from you. There's a great story about Oscar Peterson, the great jazz pianist, who's a monster. And somebody asked him, Oscar, what do you think? What are you thinking before you take one of these phenomenal solos that you come up with? And he was very thoughtful. And well, I'd have to say, I guess what I'm thinking right before I take one of those solos is, here goes.
Yeah.
But he could do that because he had put in the data, he had done the work, he had done all that. So when he goes into a state of freedom, of expansion, that stuff shows up in an organic fashion because our brains, only 5% of our brains, as you know this stuff very well from what you do, it is conscious thought processing. The rest, 95%, is subconscious or unconscious. And the difference in speed, the conscious part may be 500 words per minute, about the fastest talker in the world. You can watch him on YouTube. But the unconscious part is operating 500,000 times faster. Yet we are reluctant to surrender to that. And there's a very good reason for that, many good reasons. But that brain, that part of your brain synthesizes things in a way that in your wildest imagination, you could never do on a conscious level.
I think that's what you just brought up is so important because one of the things that I try to share with anybody who's open to a conversation is the concept of sharpening your sword is legit. It is real. And it is on so many levels what you just talked about. You're sharpening your sword so that when you need it, you can use it. You're not doing it just because. And the process of doing that hones so many other things. I'm very blessed on this podcast to have brought on some very, very successful people. And what's interesting about the most successful people is what they're really successful at, they do almost without having to think about it anymore because they invested the time and the energy and the effort and the learning and the whatever. And if I were to share the one common thing that I see in the more successful people is a yearning for continuous learning and never stopping that process.
Yes, yes. Or as one of my acting teachers once said, the definition of an artist is someone who always wants more. You
Yeah. So
know,
tell us, where do we start with the power of switching on? I mean, give us
the science of
Dan.
switching
I'm
on.
excited now.
Okay, so the science of switching on. Well, let me first give you a very major concept in this, and it's a little fun, which we'll play a game. We'll play Name That Tune. All right.
Perfect. Yeah.
Bum ba da da, bum ba da da,
Bum.
bum ba da 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 da. Okay, what is that?
I don't know what the name of it is, man. They could throw me under the bus, but I know the song.
Get Smart.
Oh yeah, yeah, right. Of course.
Get Smart, the famous TV show. No, that always happens. Everybody goes, that's so familiar, but you know,
Yeah,
whatever.
right. Exactly. Get smart. Okay, perfect.
It's Get Smart. Now, what I'm going to describe to you is something that completely went over my young adolescent head, which is, uh, does anybody, and I don't know, do you have a chat running? Um,
No.
no, okay. So if does anybody remember what the bad guy spy organization, because it was about a bumbling spy named Maxwell Smart. Does anybody remember what the bad guy spy organization was called?
Remember what the bad guy looks like.
Chaos with a K,
Right. That's right.
right? Right?
Yeah.
Everybody's it comes back fast. So now here's the real clincher. Do you remember what the good guy spy organization was called?
No.
Control.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It was a constant battle between chaos and control.
Oh, that's so clever, actually.
Isn't that clever?
Yes.
You know, there's so many funny things in it, but you know, that is the struggle that we're all in. That is where we can't step into the zone in complete control. Now, there's a caveat to that, but you know, Nietzsche has a quote where he says, one must still have chaos in one's life to give birth to a dancing star.
Beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Mario Andretti, the famous Formula One race car driver, had a more contemporary way of saying it. He said, if you feel like everything's under control, you're not going nearly fast enough.
Right. No, as a professional speaker for the last 30 years, I'll never forget when one of my mentors, Les Brown, the motivator, said to me, the moment you're not a little scared when you're going out there, the moment those butterflies disappear and you're not a little nervous, give it up. You're not, you don't have it
Absolutely.
anymore.
You
And
don't
I
care
still, I
enough
mean, it's
anymore.
the craziest thing ever because for a long time I've been doing signature work, right? Like many performers. So it's
Right.
not as though I haven't done the stuff that I do hundreds of times, literally hundreds of times in front of
Right.
live audiences. And I still will find myself for half an hour before a speech, pacing somewhere, repeating the opening lines that I'm going to deliver over and over and over and over and over so that they're so ingrained that I don't have to think about them at all. And what I found to be interesting was right after the pandemic. So all performances shut down, everything was gone. And the first one that I had coming back was for a very big client, 500 business owners in a room
Wow.
after not speaking on stage for 2.5 years because of the pandemic. And because I rehearsed that half an hour walking in the back of the room over and over and over and over, when the MC threw me a massive curveball and just threw the whole thing off, it didn't matter.
Right.
But if I hadn't
Right.
rehearsed that, then
That's
what?
right. That's right. It was so internalized and integrated. And that's the amazing thing that when you realize that you've got this body of work inside you in such a deep way, it's really your resources are extraordinary, you know. So, and yeah, I mean, you step into the quickening every time you get on stage because you know where it is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
I start preparing well into the day before any major performance.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, so the science of switching on, we got to think about a couple of other things too, which is, oh, wait, I'll give you one of my key principles that you need to have to work with this, to
Okay.
really be free and to really attain this sense of full expressing fully and unreservedly. And that doesn't mean wildly, it means congruently.
Right.
Is you have to let go of control before you can control what you let go of.
Oh, you got to say that again. That was way too good. That was way too
You
good.
have to, one has to let go of control before you can control what you let go of.
Yeah.
You know, it's like throwing the big amorphous pile of clay onto the wheel. And that's the problem a lot of people have. They want to go, oh, no, 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 no. I don't want that. Finished bowls only on my potter's wheel, you know. No, you got to start with the whole lump, the mess. And that's the chaos again.
I love that. That's
And these are states and ideas that you can train. You have to be helped into it because we're not familiar with it. We don't know how to access that. And but though we're all doing it all the time, we just don't recognize that we're doing it. So part of my coaching is drawing those things together for people so they can go, oh, that's right. When I do that, when I go out with my friends and I'm hanging and I'm wild, that's not in control necessarily, right? So now it's different how I start with people because, you know, I work with corporate executives, I work with business owners, speakers, coaches, all that kind of stuff. But I still have a large part of my business where I work with people in the entertainment industry. I work with singers and actors, and I've even done musicians and dancers, but mostly singers is the biggest part. And everybody should vote for Mackenzie Soul on American Idol because the public voting is happening.
nice.
But anyway, so uh, what we do is we have to understand what performance is because most people hear that word performing and they want to shy away from it, which of course is a protection. But that's because they don't really understand what it means. It's not about being false. It's not about being phony. As a matter of fact, only inferior actors fake it till they make it. Real great actors become. So that's what we have to do. That's how we switch on. We become that person. So, so one of the first things I do is help people have an experience of the quickening by working through text or their presentation, and then help them amplify it so they get at least a moment or two of that experience of absolutely free flow, so that while we're doing all the other work to be able to build it so that it's an absolutely consistent state that you can get into, you at least know that there's a there to get to, right? So I can facilitate anybody having that experience. Then we're looking at the 4 stages. So each stage has certain parts of work. So because the stage of body is a skill-based thing, we'll work on things like your voice or your physicality, all of which communicate so much. So much of the time, the way that they walk into a room, the way that they talk, the way that they move undermines the message that they want to deliver, and they're completely unconscious of it. And I could give you all sorts of examples, but a relevant current example is, and this is really relevant, is Biden. Okay, everybody's so worried about Biden's age. And I'd listen to him on the radio. and he would be talking like this, and he'd be, physically weak. And I just said, please let me get to him, you know?
Mhm.
But somebody must have gotten to him because of the State of the Union address,
Right? Where did that guy come from?
right?
Yeah.
Passion, intensity, voice, and it was all about his voice and his physicality and his willingness to commit, his willingness to do it all out. And what I see, people are categorizing you from the moment they see you, really, and that's whether you're an entertainer or whether you walk into a room and you're in a corporation and client interactions, speakers on stage, you're being categorized. So if your physicality, if your voice isn't congruent with your message, then we start doubting it. And so there's a way that people, well, here's a good example. It's something that really exists both in the entertainment industry and in business. This is one of the commonalities. And this is one of the major things we work on through the science of switching on, which is when I work with singer-songwriters, they would all write a song from a particular emotional place. From that moment on, they would sing about that place rather than from that place.
Interesting.
It became a recital rather than a lived experience. And it just started amazing me the more I was working with people in business on the other side. They do the exact same thing. They write their presentation, their speech, if they're lucky, from a particular emotional commitment, a care about the subject, a deep investment in the subject. And then from that point on, they speak about it, not from.
You think, Stephen, are aware, consciously aware of the required investment that it needs to be made. Like I have a friend who is a brilliant, I mean, one of the very best closers on stage. And Dave Van Hoos, his name is. And the investment that he made was he was injured, couldn't do his job. They gave him a sales job. He wasn't even all that good at it, except that he had to do 2 presentations a day, 5 days a week for 2 years.
Right.
And by the end of the 2 years, he wasn't just good at it, he was brilliant. I mean, like you watch the guy, it's almost fun to watch him because he's so much better than everybody else. When he's
Yes.
now
Yeah,
let's bring this
absolutely.
all together here, and he'll do something to his neck. It's really time that we do he does all these things subconsciously, but it's because he made the massive investment. So my question is, how are people aware that they have to make an investment? Dave says you have no idea whether your presentation's any good till you've done it at least 15 times.
Very, very few people know. And
I would have thought so, yeah.
part of the reason is because this mechanical way of communicating speeches and this mechanical way of making presentations with slides, it's accepted as, oh, that's the speaking voice. And when I do this, and it puts emphasis on the wrong words. It's mechanical. And even the best, and I'm not talking about the best of the best, like your friend, I'm talking about people who are known as good speakers. It's mechanical. I don't feel like it's really alive and really in that moment. And that's what people want to feel. They want to feel you are committed to what you're saying, that you believe in what you say you believe in. They want to feel that you're expressing it with integrity, with passion, and otherwise they stop paying attention or they feel suspicious or dubious about it. It really, you have to know how to use language. You have to know how to use your voice. And I can give you some demonstrations of that. But what we have to remember is whether we realize it or not, we're always communicating something. A dead body is communicating something. What's it communicating?
Communicating that somebody ain't there no more.
Yeah, I'm dead,
Yeah.
right? So we're always making that communication, right?
For
So we
sure.
had better be we had start building our awareness of what we're doing that either supports or undermines what the message is we want to deliver.
Yeah, makes total sense. I know that in the presentations that I do that are largely in front of business audiences, right? So these are business guys, and business guys go to see things because they want something more for their business.
Right.
But here's what happens. What I comment I get more often than anything is, man, thanks so much for sharing your story. Really love that story. It's a rough story. I have a rough story
Right.
rough background. Fortunately, having overcome a lot of that,
Good
maybe.
for you.
But that's what they say the most. It's not the thing that's going to help their business doesn't get the comments. The thing that's going to that touches them is that
It's the
story, that
human.
emotion, that reliving it in the moment, sometimes
That's
to the
right.
point of choking up.
Absolutely. And because they at that moment go, this guy is really present with me, and presence is another thing that one has to have a great deal with. Um, and that's why we call it stage presence. What it means is you are there and only there. You're not thinking about 10 other things, and that's why when you talk about people who have great presence, that, like they used to say that about um, uh, uh, the
Um,
president who, what?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
The president who did the nasty thing with Monica.
Yeah, Bill.
Bill Clinton. Okay, blanked on us for a second. But they would talk about when you talk to him, you feel like you're the only person in the room. Well, that's because he is present. That is a skill that can be taught and can be practiced. How you use your voice. We work with on the stage of mind what you're thinking while you're executing these things. Are you involved with yourself? Are you thinking thoughts that are going to undermine you? Are you thinking thoughts that are going to support you? And the thoughts that are going to undermine us are not things we think of as anything but the truth. I'm not a this speaker. I have a quiet voice. I'm soft spoken, excuse me. I use my voice quietly is true, but you are not, you're only soft spoken because of your habit. So we have to understand what's going on in your head. And there's, a useful thing I do before I do any talks, or a lot of other situations, is I have a ritual that's a two-step ritual. The first thing is a question, which is, what am I here to communicate? Because the minute I get away from, are they going to be thinking I'm good? Are they going to like what I'm doing? Uh, I go, take yourself outside, Steven. I am here because I have a specialized body of knowledge that I've spent more time on than virtually anybody else I know, except somebody who's as deeply into it as I am. And if I can help somebody get one little tidbit, then their life can substantially change. So that's what I'm there for. I'm there to give and serve in that way. And it's a deep commitment when I do that. I'm really passionate about it. I make sure I deliver. And then the other thing is a commitment to myself, which is I am leaving this event, meeting, date, whatever, feeling good about myself, no matter what happens during that event. My self-esteem is not up for grabs. It's not based upon how well or how badly I do. It's none of that. So that's really helpful because, especially if things are tanking, you can put your head down for a second and, boy, this is really going south. Okay, let's go another direction.
But let me ask you a question, and I really sincerely mean this. There was a point a long time ago where things could go south in a presentation for me, for instance.
Me too.
It has been many years. And
Right.
speaking as I do on the CEO circuit, there's no such thing as a bad day. You're either good or superlative. There's
That's right.
nothing less than, and in other words, I don't, so I wonder if when you really understand the science of switching on, you get into that place. Yes, there are some days that you just rush it, where you're just
Right.
so present and so on and so whatever.
Right.
And you walk up, and the speech for me, I know these days happen like this. I start the presentation, bam, it's over.
That's right.
And when I experience that, when I go, what the, it's over,
I
I
know.
know that was in the zone, in the pocket, in that thing. But I don't really ever have a bad day anymore on stage.
Well, one of the things I talk about when I'm introducing the science of switching on to people, and when I do short seminars that I don't have a long time, what my thing is that I'm going to give them each an experience of stepping into the quickening so that they can feel what that freedom is like. But I start out like this. I say, have you ever had one of those on fire days where you can do nothing wrong? Yeah, right? Everybody has. You want more of those? Right. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But if you're like me, then you've also had those days where you feel like you're slogging through mud and, it's a struggle. Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. We don't want those. Well, here's the problem is that most people don't understand what gives them the on fire days and what gives them the slogging through mud days. And that's what I teach in the science of switching on. The promise is just what you said. You're never wondering whether or not you're going to be on a particular day. You just become curious about what version of on it's going to be
Yeah.
that.
I have a quick story for you, super quick. So I'm going to speak, I'm on a world tour and I'm going to Africa, right?
Wow.
And it was a multi-continent tour. So it was Europe first, then Middle East, no, then Africa, then the Middle East, then home, and 11 countries. And so I forgot that I have to go get a yellow fever vaccine, or they're not
Mm-hmm.
going to let me into the country, period. So
Mm-hmm.
leaving on a Thursday, Wednesday, leaving on a Wednesday, I of course go in on Monday to get the vaccine. And the gal said, and I said, are there any side effects? And she said, yeah, here's what happens to most people. You're going to go through about a 24-hour period where it's going to be like you kind of have like yellow fever. You might get some shakes, you might get some stuff, whatever, and then it'll pass and you'll be fine. I'm like, okay, great. So my first couple of stops, it was leaving Los Angeles, were Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. So I get to Seattle. My wife, thank God, was with me. And we're fine, do the presentation. It's all good. Land in Portland. No, on the way to Portland on the airplane, I looked at her and I said, I'm not good. I am having a problem.
Right.
I start shivering and sweating and shaking and get to the hotel, get in bed, and I am just a wreck, sweating, fever, craziness, whatever. And the presentation's at 10 o'clock the next morning. I don't care. It's at 10 o'clock in the morning because it is, and whatever. So I get up at 7. I take these 2 giant bottles of water, Steven, and I go down to the sauna. And I'm determined if I drink water, I'm going to get this thing out. I'm just going to do whatever I got to
Flush
do,
it out.
try to flush this thing out. Doesn't work worth squat. So I go back up to the room, take a shower, put a suit on, and then hit the switch and walked into the room, walked into the front of the group, 75 minutes. Nobody knew a thing. 20 minutes later, I was back in the bed shivering and squirming again.
Right. Right.
Until the thing ran its course, which is about 24 hours. And it was one of those, and I've had 2 or 3 of those kind of super crazy events performing where you just know, okay, man, hit the switch. You got to hit it. They don't care
It's
that you feel bad.
exactly what it is, and you've learned that through your experiences and through your intelligence and leveraging probably a lot of stuff you've read and watching other people. You got there on your own, now most people don't, but it also takes a long time. And my deal is I shortcut it for people,
That's good.
and so I get people to be able to do it. And I want to give some practical tips about how to begin working on it.
Great.
But the important thing is that you want to have the confidence that you cannot fail, that there is nothing called failure or doing a terrible thing. And if it starts going bad, you know how to save it. And I mean, to your listeners, how many people can say, and I'm sure there are some out there, that they experience what you and I are talking about this feeling that you just walk out and you switch on. And it's not like you start doing what you know, you are on. It is flooding out of you. It is, you are fully aware, but you're completely unself-conscious. And that gives testament to what you said about walking on the stage. I played the Elephant Man a long time ago, and I was on stage for that for probably 2 hours. And that's exactly the experience I had talked about. I'd walk on stage. 2 hours later, I would walk off stage and go, what happened?
It
Exactly
is,
that.
you know what? It is such a cool thing. And I actually was speaking with a brain expert, and we were talking about, and I'd love to hear your take on this. We were talking about the fact that I crash
Yes,
after being in the zone.
yes,
And he explained to me that I had to crash. If
yes,
I didn't crash, I was addicted and had a problem. And interestingly, he referenced Julio Iglesias, who performed 6 times a week for 2 decades or whatever it
right,
was, almost
right.
nonstop. And he was saying, no, because Julio he doesn't let himself crash. And for me, it's visceral. I want to go somewhere after a great performance when I have that feeling of it starts, it's over. Right. I literally, if I'm in a hotel, I'm gonna try to find at least 20 minutes to just go lie on my bed and go,
Yes.
I'm toast.
Yes, your body has to replenish. It's used a lot of resources to do that. You've called up things in your brain in different ways. You've been creating because it's about creating in the moment and doing things that you might not have never planned, even though you're doing what you've always done. There are these spontaneous things that show up. Key principle number 10 is spontaneity lives in freedom. So you've achieved and practiced a state of freedom, and spontaneity is like a symptom of that, so yes, you have to do that unless you are addicted. But there's a refractory period for everything. It's like what is often talked about, that the greatest ideas, Rollo May in his book describes creativity, describes stepping onto the step of a bus and having a flood of ideas coming in about the stuff he'd been working on, and he wasn't even thinking about it. It just boom, So daydreaming is advised. All those things. You've got to give space for the imagination. You've got to give space for that 95% of your brain to do its work. And that's why one of the other 10 key principles, and we go through all these and work on them in when I coach the science of switching on, that learning is nonlinear and inevitable. And non-linear people know you don't do this and get that, do this. But the thing that is the missing piece for most people is the inevitability of it. You have to have an organic dysfunction for it not to synthesize. That's why we're messed up as kids, because we have no filters and people tell us things, and all of a sudden it's shake and stir, and out comes our self-image, right? And we're not much better at it as adults. If somebody says, hey, you're looking a little tired these days, you're thinking about that for the next week. Am I looking tired? But I agree for some practical things of what
Yeah,
the
let's
people
do it.
out there can do. All right. So the main things that we work with are elements of the 10 key principles and elements of these 5 stages. So So most people are very afraid of doing something like that.
I
Taking
get
a
it.
sip and taking their time, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, it's not that you should do that all the time, but it's okay to do it. You got no obligation to go on. Anyway, so let's take the first one. The first step is awareness. It's hard to do anything about that which we are unaware of. So, for instance, we have to become, and what we need to become aware of, that's key principle number 2, are patterns, are power. Patterns rule our lives in ways that you can't even begin to imagine. You'd be in great fear if you realize that you don't have the agency you think you have, you know. But here's the thing, when we become aware of those patterns, we can make alterations because a pattern is neutral. It doesn't care whether it's going to help you succeed or help you fail. It is a pattern. So if you have patterns that you're unconscious about that take you in the direction of your goals, leave them. But if you have patterns that you're unconscious about and they take you away from your goals, you can do every step by step. You can pay every mentor, you can play every guru, you can buy the books and everything, and you're still going to find a way for it to go wrong. Okay. So I'm going through it quickly, but becoming aware of how do you speak? How do you walk into a room? What are you thinking? That takes real starting to get internal reflection, and especially the ability to do it in a non-judgmental fashion, but in a fashion where you go, isn't that interesting? Wow, I never realized that. Then you can start making some changes. And that's where Stephen's law of relativity comes in. Okay.
I
Einstein,
already like it. I already like it. What is that?
Stephen's law of relativity describes the way that human beings, their minds work. We really only understand something. The penny only drops when we experience one thing relative to something else. So I can tell somebody how to do something all day, but when I trip them into an experience and then I have them go back and do what they did before, this is what happens. Oh, that's where the ahas come from, when that contrast shows up. And that's where the skill of the facilitator comes in to help people break a pattern. For instance, people will be talking about a sentence in their speech. They might have Oliver Wendell Holmes once stated, a mind that is stretched. Now I can say, don't put a pause between stated and the quote, a mind, right? Don't put a pause. So they'll go, Oliver Wendell Holmes once stated, a mind that is stretched. Now, see, the pause is still there, but they're doing it faster. And to get somebody to be able to break that pattern and go, Oliver Wendell Holmes once stated, a mind that is stretched by a new experience can never go back to its old dimensions. That did not have a break in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we learn how to identify those kinds of patterns. We learn how to identify what our voice does, because vocal variety is something that we work on. And depending upon the amount of time we have and what the person wants, we may work on this more or less. But vocal variety, there's ways of using our voice that, certain things we can vary: our volume, our pitch and melody, rate of speed, kind of the dynamic overview, the journey, pauses. So like, for instance, I can speak very loudly and really emphasize something, but then I can then come in and take a moment to really make a point. Okay. So,
And the one thing that, as a professional, for me, it's just so obvious, is the diction, the eloquence, the lack of whatever,
right.
all that stuff that doesn't happen by accident. There are very
It
few people
doesn't.
who can say red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather without bumbling their mouth into a mess.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And our verbal tics that we have, somebody pointed this out to me many years ago, that I would end sentences with, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, I started noticing it, my awareness, right?
Of course.
And then I began to realize, and this is where the stage of mind comes in, that at some level, I was apologizing for the direct thing I said. And I was softening my directness by adding that at the end. So I went through a very long period, not so long because I mastered it, but a long period of repeating sentences without that end if I did the end and stuff like that at the end of a sentence. And it was very challenging.
Interesting because I had someone, and I don't know if it was Les Brown. I've been blessed. I've had some amazing
He's amazing. Yeah.
amazing presenting people, and had some great coaching from some tremendous speakers. And someone said, and it stuck with me ever since, when someone gives you a compliment, there are only two words to answer: thank you. There
Yes.
is no such thing as, oh, it was nothing. Oh, today was not the best day. Oh, it was this and that. Ah, da, 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 da. And it stuck with me so profoundly
Yes.
that now I am interestingly to what we're talking about in terms of the science of switching on, I am far more present to a compliment because I
Right.
know that what I'm going to do is express my gratitude for what they say, and that's it. That is my
That's
only
right.
obligation. It's
You
the
don't
only
tell them
thing.
how you were better last night or anything like that.
No.
I'm in such agreement. And here's a way of thinking about it, which is again how we start analyzing things in this on the stage of mind. Because when you think about it, they had an experience with you, and they are grateful for having had that experience. And they want to give you the gift of telling you what you did for them. And you can imagine somebody giving you a gift at your birthday, and you go, oh, nah, take it back. I don't want it. I don't want it. You know? No, that's crazy.
That's right.
So that's
And
where the
it's so
grace
normal.
comes
So
from.
often people do that. It literally took someone pointing it out to me, and that was a while
Right.
back, for me to say, "You're so right. I I feel far better honoring someone by saying thank you sincerely than by
Right.
adding on some demeaning thing that I might say about myself."
Absolutely. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter in that relationship. And that's what we have to think about is the relationship always to the people you're communicating with. And you are delivering and need the same skill as what you're describing in delivering in an individual human interaction as you do when you're on a stage talking to many people. You still need developed skills, is what you're talking about. You still need to be aware of this habit that you have, and you need to excise it from your communication.
100%.
So, yeah. So there's another thing uh, that another way we can use vocal variety in that speed, and this is where the control chaos comes in. I have an exercise that I have people do, which is a fast talking exercise. And in that exercise, you just have to keep talking at this speed, no matter what you have something to say or you don't have something to say, you just got to keep going. And people are really afraid to do that because they feel like they start talking gibberish. They think it's making nonsense and they're making no sense whatsoever. And then I let them go further than they expect me to stop. They say, well, I've gone long enough, so isn't he going to stop me? But that's especially when I don't stop them because they've got to keep going. All right. So, and then I have them ask the other people in the group, if it's a group I'm teaching, I first asked that person, did you feel like you were making any sense? That's not a bit, is the response. Then we asked the people who are listening, who universally say, no, it was very, very clear. But that's one of those control things, because when we're speaking that fast, we can't reflect on what we just said and ask, okay, how truthful was that? We can't measure it. We can't rate it.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, that's so cool.
I mean, we're so on the same wavelength with this, But that's what anybody. It's like Oscar Peterson when he says, "Here goes." It's what you hear people do when they enter that state. You can call it the flow, you can call it the zone, you can call it whatever, but it's a different state of being that can be learned and practiced. And you practice freedom by willingness to make mistakes and by trying it out. So you need a combination of focused attention on things like your rate of speed, the vocal variety, the melody, how you manage that. You need things like your body to become aware of. Do I step back when I say something powerful? Or when I'm on a virtual event like this? Where are my hands? Where's my face? Am I really talking to the person who is on that camera, on that screen with me? And it's very important. And one thing I have people practice with is the idea that go beyond what they look like and start thinking about the animating force that makes them, that brings them into motion, that causes them to say things, that causes them to feel things, connect with, you can call this whatever spirit, I don't have to get religious, but the spirit of the person who's inside. And when you start doing that, it's a profound experience, and you start caring about the person much more. And the more you care about the person, the more you want to serve the person in a healthful way, in a way that contributes to them, in a way that is meaningful for them. I recommend people go into parties and take a minute before they go in and just put yourself in a frame of mind of, who am I going to help tonight? How am I going to listen to everybody I talk to see whether or not I can provide some help, an idea, a listening ear for, these are conscious things that are not what we normally do. How are people going to think of me? All that kind of stuff. So here's another exercise that I'd love people to do. Are we getting down to the end here?
We're good. We're good. We got a little more time.
Okay. So again, it's awareness. We have to be aware of ourselves physically. So we basically barrel through the day, and we are walking head down, chugging along, and the whole, just really pushing forward, pushing forward, pushing forward. If you can start noticing that you're in that state and go, whoa, let me saunter for a few minutes. It's painful. It's painful, but saunter. And you'll realize, first of all, that you control your life more than you think you do, because that couple of minutes later that you're going to arrive at the place is a way worthwhile trade-off for the sense of peace you're going to have, for the sense of joy you're going to experience by being present with the day, so that's something you can do. And on that level, another thing to do is stop in non-prescribed places. So like if you're walking through a parking lot, in a mini mall, like an outdoor parking lot, there are places that you're supposed to be and places you're not supposed to be. Cars are supposed to be on those lots, right? But what if you just stop in the middle of the road, not with cars coming by, and say, you just stop and go, this used to just be a place on Earth. It wasn't originally a paved parking lot. Yeah. And then be on your way, It's regaining control. It's regaining dominion and agency. And so you've got to work these specifics like your vocal abilities, your voice production, your body movement. You've got to learn how to develop scripts, materials that, an actor, may I yell for a minute?
Of course.
Bandit, be quiet. Are you hearing the dog offset?
No.
Okay. Bandit, go ahead. Okay, so that's a spontaneous moment, right? I could have felt self-conscious about having done that. But instead, you play, all right? All right, so So you need a script. It's just like in Hollywood. It's like writing a good song. It's like writing a good speech. You need to make sure that there's a through line. You need to make sure that you understand what the point is and that you're driving to that throughout your whole thing, that you don't go off on unnecessary tangents, that things that are very precious to you, you're willing to take a look at and say, you know, I love that, but I'm not going to bring it. I did a lot of that for this. I wanted to do my joke where I say, how many people here are public speakers, you know? And a lot of people, you know, a few people raised their hand. I said, oh, so the rest of you are just in your room talking to yourself?
Right. Yeah.
We're all public speakers, right? But now I used it, but I put it down at the bottom of the page because I said that isn't relevant within the flow of what I really want to talk about. So the intentionality of your physicality and your awareness of it makes a big difference. Now, the next thing is when you're looking at a speech, a way of analyzing it is identifying what I call thingness. All right. Now, people are looking for, well, how do I phrase this? How do you decide how to phrase it? You phrase things so well, you know. I wish I could call up, well, here, I'll grab something here. Oh, this is a class action lawsuit thing somebody was pitching me to sign up for or whatever. So, so the lawsuit alleges that certain 2011 to 2022 model year Hyundai vehicles that were not equipped with an engine mobilizer called the class vehicles contain design flaws, right? So let's just analyze that for a second. The lawsuit is a thing. So therefore, I'm going to say the lawsuit and make sure people understand and that I understand that that's what I'm speaking about, right? Then next, what does it do? The lawsuit alleges that certain, where is it, that certain 2011 to 2022 Hyundai model year Hyundai vehicles, that's a lot of things. So, but the thing is vehicles. Then you have a lot of qualifiers. Hyundai vehicles. Then you have 2011 to 2022 model year Hyundai vehicles. Right. So if you understand the things that are there and the modifiers, you start learning how to phrase things that illuminate the most important elements, the things that are active, the things that are modifiers, which you can do without frequently, but they also elevate what you're talking about to a higher place. They make it more descriptive. So that's the use of thingness, which is very quick. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, that's super interesting because I know I'm very blessed that I've had some incredible mentors. And my first mentor way back when he helped me write my books, he helped me with my speeches. And when I said I wanted to be a professional speaker, he said, okay, here's the deal. This is how this works, because he was an incredible speaker. He was a very well-known art dealer. So he sold expensive things to people who did not need them. Right. I would routinely walk into his office and he would say, hey, here, check this out. It's a Picasso. I just bought it. I said, oh, yeah? How much? He said, 10 million bucks. So I'm holding on to something that's $10 million in my hands going, you know, why don't you just take it back? Okay, you're good. Right.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was his whole thing was there's a sequence. First, when you start out speaking, you don't know anything, you share other people's stuff. Then you use quotes and you do a lot of that. And there are many speakers to do this. Only when you become really good do you get the privilege of telling your own stuff, sharing your own story.
Right.
There was like an evolution to the whole thing. And I really was greatly, very grateful for him putting me through the motions, because he said to me, you don't get to use your own stuff until I say so.
That's
So
fantastic.
he was a mentor that was like strict.
That's great because we have to be able to lend ourselves to convincingly communicate anything. This is not just true in front of an audience on a stage or in front of this kind of a thing. This is true when you're talking to your spouse or your kids, you know. It's got to be authentic and you got to be able to stand behind it, right? It's in every facet of your life. And we all, back to performance, we all perform tasks. We all act, take action. We all take on certain roles. I'm not the same role. So that's why be yourself is a terrible thing, because which self? The self I am with my kids? The self I am with my clergy of my church or whatever? You know, so to learn how to commit and deliver not your own stuff with the same degree of commitment and importance, that's what you have to learn. Then when you go to your own stuff, then it's magical, you know.
That's exactly what happened. Well, Stephen, I mean, unbelievable. So I have to share a fun factoid that relates to everything we're talking about.
Sure.
Woke up this morning feeling like death. I've spent the entire day in bed until 15 minutes before this phone call.
Wow.
Got up, jumped in the shower, ran a razor across my face and said, this is going to be great. I just know it is. Hit the switch. And I hit the switch. And it has been absolutely magnificent. I will be going back to bed after this, but I deeply appreciate every instant that we have spent together. It has been
Ridgely, me too. Thank you very much. Me too. From the first day I met you, I said, this is a really brilliant man and somebody who I feel very simpatico with. And so I thank you for following through on, you know, getting up out of your deathbed to do this.
You know, it happens to me once or twice a year, and I know myself well enough to know if you feel bad, go to bed, you'll be good the next day. If you wait and fight it, then it'll stick around for 3 or 4 days. So
absolutely.
I canceled everything except this.
You know, absolutely. And that goes back to the thing you were talking about post these kinds of events needing to have that refractory period where we let go.
Yeah. Final words to our folks out there that are probably going, wow, that was crazy good. What would you want to share with them?
Well, I want to share that there is no greater feeling than being able to walk out and share and express in a full way the things that mean something to you and the things that you know will enhance other people's lives. And you know, when I do a great talk, I don't come out of there or facilitate a great workshop where people have made massive transformations. I go, boy, I was badass. I feel such a sense of gratitude that sometimes it even brings tears to my eyes. And I go, why me? You know, and I don't feel like it's me. I feel like, you know, it was a task I'm shepherding, as we all have those tasks, you know. And so it's, you know what I'm saying. So for everybody, I encourage you all to find somebody to help you work on your communication, work on your presence on stage. You don't know what you don't know. And I guarantee you, I mean, I work with Grammy Award winners and CEOs of major companies. And if I'm giving them critiques, I'm certainly going to have something to say about you, you know? And that's not being harsh. That's just, there are things that you can do that will elevate your presence, your communication, your state in the world, how people perceive you, that will just enrich your life and enhance your experience of yourself overall. And I want to make a little offer. May I do that real quickly?
Of course, of course.
Okay. So if any of the stuff I resonated with, I spoke about resonated with you, go to my website, which is stevenmemel.com, and there's a form for a free consultation. And, I do the kinds of things I do are one-on-ones. I do small groups. I sometimes do live events, but you don't even have to know what you want a consultation on, something we can explore together. And it's not selling you anything. I just want you to talk with me about, I want to have a conversation with you about what's on your mind in relation to communication, relationships in that, just take me up on that. I'm offering you some free time to really just listen and have you share with me the things that you're facing and see what I can contribute.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And everybody that's been watching this for a while knows that I was probably about to say about the same thing that he just said. Go to the link right down there. You know where the link is. Go check it out. Go to stevenmemel.com and see what you can do. Book that time with Stephen, who's so generously offering it to you, and see what magic might come out of it. Really could be quite amazing. Stephen, thank you again for giving us this time today. Very grateful. I've got all kinds of very cool notes. Sometimes when you put the notes after the podcast, they're not that interesting. But some of the ones that you came up with are really interesting. Stephen's law of relativity, let go of control. You can control what you don't let go of. I mean, all these things I've got written down here. Inferior actors fake it till they make it. Real actors become. Awesome. Just love that. All right, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. You're wonderful on this, and I appreciate you very much, and I hope you get some good rest.
Thank you very much. Big hug your way, brother, and we'll catch up very soon. Ciao for now.
Okay. Bye.